I don't know why Jake was worried about getting out of here on time tonight, but I think he's going to a party or something. So maybe we should get him up here.
It's like, because this thing could be like 3 hours.
Oh, that was it.
Yeah,
he wanted to know
that's
how long he could talk. He could talk too. But we'll bring him in if it gets to be too long. Come on, Jake.
We're gonna have to rein Darcy in, my goodness. Hi, everybody. I'm Jake Bramante. A quick bio about me. I serve on the board here. I like birds and I hike a lot. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about this, although this is me up at Mount Brown Lookout because I love the October Hawk Watch. The genesis of all this is my goal every year is to hit 200 birds in the Flathead. That's like my little... And that kind of gets me out. And I know there's some people that are really poo-poo about listing and just chasing birds and all that stuff. But for me, it causes me to be more cognizant and mindful of all the different bird species and the locations and the time of year and all that kind of stuff. As you can see, Elliot won last year in the Flathead, and so he's got a target on his back. Actually, and I do look at this and I think it's fun to kind of like, Josh going back and forth, Josh with each other, joke around. But yeah, so I hit 208 last year. My 208th bird, I believe, was a yellow-billed loon for the which was a really fun bird that Dan and Ann Fagery saw for the Glacier Christmas bird count, and I was super excited about that. So we will look at that. One thing to note over here, I don't do a lot of complete lists all the time because I usually am pretty strategic when I go out, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing this presentation. The other thing is that I really think it's interesting how the rhythm of birds throughout the year is something we have over botanists. No hate over there, Pat. But over botanists, like hunters, they have like a smaller window where they can really, enjoy their, otherwise they're looking at books. But we have like, as birders, we have like 12 months, and there's a really cool cycle that happens all throughout the year. That's what I'm going to talk about tonight. Bird.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
You're good.
There we go. The couple things. First thing is, if you want to see more birds, there's a handful of things that can help you out. If you have no binoculars, you should get binoculars. If you have junky binoculars, you don't have to go out and spend $2,500 on Zeiss. But if you have ones from like World War II, you should probably consider getting ones like even Vortex and everything, getting a new pair of more of the modern binoculars. The difference between low-end binoculars and high-end binoculars has shrunk so much that just getting a pair of, some of the cheaper like Vortexes. If you do get some of the like Chinese ones off of Amazon and stuff, they make really great glass, but they usually do not stand behind them. I know some people, a couple of friends of mine had these really great ones, and the focus knob broke, and they were done. They could not get it. So the first thing is binoculars. If you have binoculars, I'm going to suggest this right over here is getting yourself a spotting scope, and spotting scopes come in a wide variety. And the reason is because binoculars only go so far, and getting a spotting scope or borrowing or having a friend or and having a timeshare into a spotting scope. And these also you don't have to, you can spend like $400 on a spotting scope, $500 on a spotting scope, and you use it forever. But if you're going to look at ducks in ponds, on lakes, it's really difficult to do it without a spotting scope. So if you want to see more birds in the Flathead, I'm not saying you have to have a spotting scope, but if you want to see more, this really helps out. And then, the last thing here is I have found using cameras is very, very important. I'm just going to go ahead and, I don't know why Billings is calling me. I'm going to set my phone to airplane mode. Thank you. Okay, so is the camera. So I used to hike around with this camera right here. And this is a Panasonic Super Zoom. This one's a little bit more expensive than the one I have here on the left. But with these cameras, the thing about these cameras is that all in one, they do wide angle to zooming in. Some of the less expensive ones, like this Panasonic here, can zoom in even further. The reason why I really encourage people to hike, to bird with a camera is because a lot of times when you are out looking for birds, you'll see a bird that you do not recognize, and being able to take a picture of it and look at it down the road is super, super helpful. And you can go ahead and spend a lot of different money doing it. I ended up getting this one, which is a pretty light camera. At the end, I can show you guys, as long as you promise not to drop it. But this camera right here is kind of like a good mix between having a DSLR where you can go ahead and change lenses and everything, but it's light enough where I can hike with it, as opposed to having ones that are better glass but much heavier. And so, and that's for under $2,000. That probably sounds like a lot. If you do this a lot, $2,000 for a camera is pretty reasonable. This one is the Canon R7 with the RF 100 to 400 lens. But anyways, I found this definitely helps with birding as well, like I said, because you can take pictures, review it later on. And I can go, there's a lot more to dive in on this. This is could be like 45 minutes to an hour of talking about that. But my encouragement to you is consider hiking, spotting scope, binoculars, and when you're out birding. Okay. The other thing is, when you're out birding, something super helpful, if you go type in Flathead County GIS, you can go to the GIS mapping application, and you can see who owns what where. You can see if a road's private or not. And if you're going to go to a place, especially you're not very familiar with, it's really a good idea to kind of figure out, can I even be there? Is it okay if I walk into that field? Is that BLM land? Is that private? What's going on? Because there are times when you will have people coming up to you going you can't be here, and it's really good to know if they're telling the truth or not. The other one is there's a program by a Montana company called Onyx, and they have an app that allows you to do this. Shannon and I have talked about this. It's really nice to be able to download the map and go somewhere and know whether or not you can actually be where you are. And I'll talk about a couple of those places a little bit later. So when I'm out birding throughout the year, I'm thinking about what are the habitat needs? I'm thinking about the time of year, and that is going to give me the species that are possible. And so that's where we're going to go today. So first thing is, I like to know, this is a good resource for everybody, even if you don't use eBird. We're going to go ahead and hop on eBird right now. It's demo time, baby.
I can do it. We're doing it.
So Jess is going to go ahead and drive for me. So here we are on the live internet. And so here's the eBird webpage. And if you go up into that corner where it says Explore, there's many, many things you can do in here, but specifically, we're going to go to regions, and Jess is going to go ahead and type in Flathead, and Flathead County is going to pop up. And then it'll refresh, hopefully. Or hit enter, I don't know. There we go. So this is the Flathead County list. So this is restricted to only checklists that are being put in Flathead County. And so if you scroll down, you can see the community targets. Now this is something kind of new that eBird is doing, where they're saying, hey, here's some birds that you can see this time of year you should be paying attention and looking for. For example, we can see tundra swan right here. And you're going to see that the thicker this line is, the more tundra swans are going to be. On the right-hand side, it says new species short-eared owl, and that's Pat short-eared owl that I just saw this evening. But if you scroll down, you can see more, there's pictures, there's recent checklists and trip reports. I really if we go down to species leaders, we can go ahead and see Jess Garvey, little J, little G, apparently is in third place right now, so target on your back.
Let's go.
I have some work to do. I'm at 43. But that's pretty good for January, right? We're starting out pretty strong. So as if you want to scroll right back up there to the recent checklist right here, that one. If you click on recent checklists on the actual word, you can see the list of checklists. And this is a really good way to just kind of hey, I want to go birding. Where are people going? And you can see the species. That's how many species. So you can say there's 22 at Egan Slough. That's interesting. Maybe I should go check out where Egan Slough is. And if you look at these lists, you can see where those are. Actually, go ahead and click on this list right here. We'll just look at Craig's. And then if you click on this little teeny tiny map icon right there, that will show you where that checklist is. So that's pretty sweet. And then, so yeah, let's go ahead and go back up to Explore here. So that's the first part, is just looking at the checklist and see what people are seeing, see what pictures are being taken. It's really a cool resource to kind of get you rolling. The second one is if we go over here to bar charts, that's a joke for you. And then you can choose location. We chose Montana, then counties in Montana, and then continue, and then Flathead. There it is.
Oh, geez.
It's the alphabet. That's a joke. I can give her a hard time because she's driving. Okay, so what this is this is all of the eBird data for Flathead County since, well, they say 1900. So, they put in backlogs of data. These are bar charts for like every species that's ever been recorded in eBird. Like, that's a lot of information. So this is a great resource for you to see, like, when are these birds around? When is a good chance for them to see? So like if you're have ever eBird and you've seen like it's a rare bird or it's not common or whatever, this is the data that they're pulling from. And so you can see like cinnamon teal, they just start showing up at the end of March, and then they kind of start to, at the beginning of October they kind of peter out. So anyways, this is kind of the foundation of what I'm looking at over here, and this is a lot of this stuff ends up just kind of coming from experience as well. So we'll go back over, demo time's over.
Oh God. Okay, we can do that.
Yeah, it's cool.
We can figure that out.
Perfect. Okay, so the last one is Merlin Bird ID. Hopefully everybody here has installed this on your phone. Make sure you delete your old sound recordings. If you don't know how to do that, you can talk to me later because that will fill up your phone. But sound ID is super important now for us because it's a great way to learn songs, not just, oh, I'm going to see. So if you install Merlin Bird ID and you can click on the little sound icon, the little microphone, turn your phone away from you to where the speaker is, the bottom of your phone is facing out, and don't make any noise. Like zippers, whispers, all that stuff, any noise coming from you and your party is too loud. Because what you want it to be as loud as possible for the birds, and when you make noise, it turns the input volume down, which turns the birds off. So make sure everybody's super, super quiet, pointed towards the birds, and obviously if things like wind or whatever, that will affect it. But what I would encourage you is don't look at sound ID first. Try and figure out what you're hearing first. Am I hearing a nuthatch, a chickadee? What kind of woodpecker do I think that is? So kind of in your mind, try and do it as flashcards, like test yourself, and you'll learn a lot more. And it becomes really important if it's windy, if the bird makes one call and that's it, you're like, oh man, and you finally get it out. I don't know if you've ever done that, and like it stops making any noise. So if the more you can learn, even though you have this as a crutch, it's a great learning tool. So I really encourage people to use that. So, okay, quick overview, habitat, that's where it's at, as they say. Oh man, we're gonna cut off some of those. Yeah. I went all the way to the edge.
Did we like that?
I like it. So, so habitat, the handful of habitats that we have here in the Flathead County, we have farmland, which you guys are familiar with. This tends to be really good pretty much all year round. You can visit farmland throughout the year, and you're going to find birds. Grassland, I would say you can actually find birds throughout the year as well. And grassland, you can just basically say what a cow would be eating out in this field. So like if it's true green kind of a thing, it's not. Like if it's all evenly mowed grass, that is not what we're talking about here. Wet meadows, mosquitoes, anyone? These are very productive, but they're also kind of miserable, and they're really only good primarily in like May through like August. And then we have open water. I'm thinking big lakes, Lake McDonald, Flathead Lake. You could argue like Bowman Lake and stuff, but these are going to be the bigger lakes that are going to have some of like the bigger loons, swans, some of the bigger birds. And then we have wetlands, and these can be a wide variety. Wetlands can have reeds, they can have cattails, they can have grassy edges, and each one of those will make a difference on some of the birds you see, but they're super important. Right now, they're kind of trash for finding birds. You may be able to find like a marsh wren and a song sparrow, but for the most part, a lot of wetlands are really, they don't deliver a whole lot. And then we have our riparian areas. These similarly are going to be better when birds are nesting. And then river bottomlands. This is along the Stillwater River, just south of Owen Sourwine. I was standing on the bridge that goes to Leisure Island. All good places to look. This is also amazing bank swallow habitat. See that on the side there? Bank swallows, everybody. Then we have like our secondary dry forests. Like secondary, I'm just saying because these are not old growth, right? These are ones that have probably been burned, harvested, whatever. This is, Shannon took this picture on her field trip up to Heron. So that dry, rocky ponderosas, that sort of a forest. We have our wetter forest. This tends to be on the east side of the valley. Chestnut-backed chickadees, those kinds of birds. Spruce fir forest. And then we have our inland rainforest. So this is going to be in Glacier, right? This is going to be our Trail of the Cedars kind of an area, and this has its own set of birds. So then we keep going. We have a lot of different ecotypes here. Subalpine meadows up in Glacier is a good place to find them, but also like Jewel Basin, heading up Red Meadows, the Whitefish Range, all that kind of stuff. And then we have obviously the tippy top. We have our alpine, where there's just little tiny flowers growing. And we have a female white-tailed ptarmigan here hanging out. Okay, so Happy New Year, everybody. I wanted to do this presentation in January because we're kicking everything off here. There's a chance for us to make locals great again. And I'm not dissing on any of these birds, but these birds, when you're out counting, there's nothing, seeing a magpie and counting a magpie is the most fun, the first one of the year. Now, magpies are fascinating birds, and they have some really cool, like sweet little chatty back and forth that they do with each other instead of just like the normal magpie calls. That part of them I really enjoy, like when I can be around them. But as far as like, I can go out and find a magpie, right? So that the frequency and stuff. But being able to see all these at the beginning of the year is super fun. I do want to call out the magpie, the chickadee, and the raven. And that is going to be, keep in mind for those, the corvids and the chickadees for later on when we talk about owls. So they're very important for a lot of things. This is a quick little list. Everybody should have 25 before January's out right here. Of course, the Bohemian waxwing I have in there. And if you can submit you should be able to swap out like a ringneck pheasant. I think I missed that one. So you can put a ringneck pheasant in for that Bohemian waxwing. But I think by the end of, if you're keeping a list, so one of the reasons why I love keeping a list, every spring my wife and I hike up Heron Park, and we started keeping track of the flowers that we saw early in the year. And it was like, well, how many do you think we're going to see? And it's like, probably 5 or 6. And I think we ended up seeing like 13 or 14 species. And by keeping track of these, what it really did was makes us realize the variety that we saw. Because sometimes you don't realize how much of something you saw, but if you go out and all of a sudden you realize, like, I didn't really see that many birds, and then if you've been keeping track, you realize, well, I saw 23 species, or I saw 40 species. Of course, it also makes you really appreciate summer when you can get a lot more. Here we are in the icy dead of winter. This is West Valley somewhere with a little fox. So I'm going to try and pick things up here a little bit. All right, the first part of the icy dead of winter is backyard feeding. There's some talk about like how much of this we should be doing with the avian bird flu. Obviously, if you have chickens, you probably shouldn't at all. Definitely be keeping your bird baths clean, but if you're going to be feeding, the water is super hard to come by, especially in the cold spell. And so if you want to have birds at your feeder in the summer as well, like this is bear safe, the water is bear safe. And birds will come to your, like normally you're not going to see warblers usually go for the suet, or you're not going to see a warbler go for your sunflower seeds, but you will see them go for the water. So water is a really cool way to go ahead and bring birds into your yard. I like the heated bird baths that are plastic with the element on inside because they're really easy to clean. Obviously, having the wide variety of feeder, and I have a whole presentation on picking the feeder, the food type, and things like that to get the most amount of birds and to cater them to the ones in your area. But with the birds that are coming to your feeder, oftentimes it's easy to go like, oh, the house finches are here. Cool, there's house finches. I see them all the time. I love my little house finches. Or you're like, oh, hey, my little house sparrows or the whatever are coming, and you just don't pay that much attention. Well, sometimes what happens is in those house sparrows, there's a Harris's sparrow. And sometimes in the juncos, there's a white-throated sparrow, which these are both true. This was in Lewistown, but this happens where people will have house sparrows come in, and all of a sudden this little Harris's sparrow is running around, and they run. That these two are runners. And then that's a purple finch that was hanging out with, and that was in my yard, that was hanging out with a bunch of house finches. So, but paying attention and just study all the locals. Bo Crease talks about this, and finding rarities is knowing the local birds. When you know your local birds, when somebody new comes in, you're like, that's different. Like something's amiss with that bird. So know your locals, know what they sound like. When I hear a flock of redpolls fly over, I'm like, man, that's some really funny sounding pine siskins, because they're closely related and they sound very similar to them, but not really. So knowing what all of your locals, what they sound like, what they fly, how they fly in, how they hop around, all that stuff. Open fields. This is out at West Valley by West Valley Ponds. This is great places to see winter visitors. Is out in open fields. We're looking mostly in the open fields. Primarily, we're looking at the tops for the raptors because they're hunting a lot of the mice and that sort of thing. So if you don't spend any time climbing or spend much time in the park, this is the time to see prairie falcons. This is seeing them. I've seen them in pretty much every one of our farmland areas. Merlins, this is the great time to see merlins. In town, you'll see merlins. You just got to look up. And sometimes on those really huge power poles, like if you're driving on Highway 35, there's just those, the merlins and sometimes kestrels are so tiny on there, you'll think like, oh, sometimes it's a flicker. So you like pull off and you put your flashers on and you look up because you have binoculars with you. I do. And then you look up and you're like, oh, that's a flicker. And then I wait till it's safe and then I turn on. But sometimes all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, hold on a second here. So the rough-legged hawks is a great winter bird for us because we only get these in the winter. We don't get these in the summer. Obviously, snowy owls, Cecilia Notes saw one here in December, and so we're anxiously awaiting to see if anybody else finds some. I've trolled Lower Valley looking on rooftops and stuff a few days before she actually saw hers. The amazing one that I'm always looking for would be the gyrfalcon. And one thing that's kind of interesting is when you have in your mind of what like a snowy owl looks like, it's all white, but we get these ones that have a lot of black in them. Same thing with the gyrfalcon. If you've seen photos, if you Google gyrfalcon, you can see this like white falcon with these very light, dark stripes on them, or these dark like little tick marks on them. But we get these guys, and these are immatures, and that's I think that's what a lot of these are. These are the wandering immatures. They're just kind of going around. Like the yellow-billed loon I saw, it was an immature. So that's kind of tends what happens. So. For these special birds like the snowy owl or the gyrfalcon, you're going to have to kind of look in the immature category. So this is a first-year bird, so they don't usually look as handsome as some of the adults. But if you see a gyrfalcon, please let me know because I love them. And then obviously the northern pygmy owl. This is the time of year to see them. I've been seeing them. I've seen a handful of them last year. I don't have them on this year yet. But you'll see them on treetops. You'll also see them on power lines. I'm also looking on power lines for another raptor, which we've obviously talked about quite a bit, which is the northern shrike. Get your northern shrikes before they're gone, because they're here in the winter, and then they'll start to fade out. And of course, in August you won't be able to see any of them. And then on the far right, we have a non-raptor. We have a snow bunting. And snow buntings can be really difficult because they'll be flying. You'll see this flock of little teeny tiny birds flying over a field, and they go whoop, and they disappear. And you're like, was that horned larks? Was that snow buntings? I don't know, because they're just over that roll or they're in the stubble and I can't see them. Sometimes, though, you'll get lucky and you'll look up on power lines and there they are, just hanging out. Speaking of stubble and snow buntings, Bragg Road, Shannon Donaldson, and well, Bridger probably, I think first. Yeah, Bridger saw them on Bragg Road, and now a handful of people have seen them. We'll talk about where that's at, but they're flying around there, and they're so gorgeous. I love me some snow buntings. So, but we're looking in the stubble because we can see a lot of different birds that are hanging out. So these are going to be fields usually with these. So if you're driving around in the summer, kind of keep note of what's growing. So if you see wheat fields, go, I want to be checking that field out later on. With this stubble sticking up, it helps like give birds access to some of the grain below. There's also going to be mice and whatnot, so the birds that eat the mice are going to go there. So yeah. Clickety. All right, so this weedy edges, I was driving down here today on Middle Road, and I saw a bunch of these little guys, and there ended up being 15 gray partridges. So they were just kind of walking through a stubbly field, as they should. And then all along the weedy, so a lot of times you'll see them kind of pop in and out of the edges. The weedy edges will oftentimes you'll have American tree sparrows, which is a winter specialty. They have this rusty cap with this rusty eye stripe and the bicolored bill. It's yellow on the bottom and dark. But these are great for like West Valley, like if you're driving up Spring Creek, you'll see these little sparrows, they'll hop up on top of a pivot and then they'll drop back down. But they're probably our most plentiful sparrow by numbers in the winter, and then they completely disappear in the springtime. And then of course the red poles. The red poles oftentimes will be hanging out with pine siskins or American goldfinches, so definitely if you get those birds at your feeders, especially if you're in town, you can keep an eye on that. But if you're out in like West Valley or something like that, those fields where they had canola and they leave some of it on the edges, and there's these little canola stands. Oftentimes that's where you'll all of a sudden see a big flock of these red poles fly up from there. So. Here's just a handful of the more or less popular open fields. Number one is West Valley. These are in no particular order. If you notice, they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. West Valley is great this time of year for finding sunbirds. You're not going to go out there and usually fill a list where there's probably like 25, 30 species, but you're going to find cool birds. That's where you can find potentially a short-eared owl. You can find potentially a snowy owl. I was talking to Dick today, and he was telling me that he saw a prairie falcon out there, and it's not uncommon to see rough-legged hawks, potentially see snow buntings and horned larks. So you won't see thousands of birds, but you might see thousands of birds, but you won't see 1,000 species, but you will see some really cool ones. Over on Middle Road, Columbia Falls Stage, Fairview Cemetery, that's kind of, I do a raptor survey in that area. Same basic kind of birds, including partridge as well as like prairie falcons and stuff. 3 is kind of south, I call it East Kalispell. And that is, if you take the Old Steel Bridge Road and drive down there and start exploring that area, if you take Old Steel Bridge Road, it actually goes over a spring, and that spring has like a little creek, and sometimes you can see snipe in the winter. So that's a cool little spot there. And early in the spring, because there's cows and everything, you'll oftentimes see flocks of waterfowl gleaning, and that's a good place to see like Eurasian widgeon and stuff. But anyways, a little bit over towards Creston, there's a lot of farmland over there. Egan Slough's over there, another spring-fed little creek that goes through there. Cows are another great attractant. You can get blackbirds and that stuff. Craig's always in that area, so he's pulling all kinds of crazy, awesome birds out of there. And then Lower Valley, number 5, that's where obviously traditionally we see a lot of snowy owls. It'll be interesting to see with the level of development that's happening down there to see how many snowy owls continue to be down there, if at all. It's been a couple of years where we haven't really had any down there or of any volume, but we'll see if that's just lemming population related or what, or if it's actually the development. But keep in mind all 5 of these are really good all throughout the year. Just to get in your car, drive around, so then we're looking at some more open water. There's my yellow-billed loon. Well, it's like the Dan and Ann Fagries yellow-billed loon on the bottom right. We have some cackling geese down over here, but we're looking for open water. Lake Blaine was open for a really long time, but I think it's going to close. I think it's going to totally ice over here pretty soon. And so you're kind of stuck with going to like Lake McDonald. And Wayfarers is a really great spot in the winter. And if you go to Wayfarers, obviously go out, walk out onto the dock and look along the shoreline. And then if you, I don't know if everybody knows, but going up onto the rocky outcrop, there's like benches up there. But going up there and looking out, this is where a spotting scope is invaluable. And even looking south along, there's like a little bay where I think Flathead Lake Lodge is. But that's where I usually see cool loons. I've seen Pacific loons there. But then any open water like McDonald Creek is great. Over at the Chesapeake, what is that? Crescent Fish Hatchery, thank you very much. Yeah, so that's spring fed, so that stays open. Also, underneath bridges, like Ashley Creek, sometimes there'll be a road that goes over, and the salt from the road will melt the ice. So you'll have like just this little tiny pocket of wet. So like I've driven down Demersville Road and Foy's Bend Road, and there's 2 roads there that has open water. And so obviously Owen Sour Wine's super great for that. Here's all the kind of list. Oldenburg Road, which is just west of Sportsman Bridge. If you drive to the end of that, that's a real big bend. You can also go to Kehoe's Agate Shop and look at it from that side, and that's really a great spot to find. I've seen red-breasted mergansers and other waterfowl when other parts of the valley are completely iced over. And then here's a dipper I saw the other day at the Crescent Fish Hatchery. Forested areas that are, I'm going to go through this quick, is Heron Park. Is really great this time of year. It's fun this time of year. I like Heron Park as a birding spot. I saw a northern pygmy owl. I oftentimes will see just like, I don't know, sometimes we'll see Cassin's finches, and we'll talk more about what we see in the spring. But then Lone Pine's good. They also have feeders, which is good. Owen Sour Wine, it's got water. It's got a bunch of different habitat types. Wayfarers, like I mentioned, is also good for its forests surrounding it. I was just in Lawrence Park and I saw a Sharpie. This is like a terrible time. It was like 4:30. But if you go to Lawrence Park and across from their pavilion, there's a trail system in there. And I know that there are, I would almost guarantee you that there are, I don't know if they are pine siskins or red poles, that you can see the catkins. They feed on birch trees, and so the catkins have fallen, like you can see catkin stuff all over the snow. And they also have, I think, Russian olives in there. And I have seen in the Russian olives, that's a favorite of pine grosbeaks. So I really feel strongly, like if you went there in the morning, you could probably find a few of those different birds. But walk the Downey Loop, I think is what it's called. I just was out there looking at it. So anyways, doing like the Jewel Basin Nordic Sea Trails, it's going to be pretty quiet out there, but if you stop and listen, you might find some cool stuff. And then, of course, Glacier, especially along like McDonald Creek. Winter tips, get out of your car and listen. Don't just be driving and like just roll down the window and listen. And the other thing is if it's really hot in your car and you roll down your window, all that heat comes out and now you're looking through all these heat waves. So sometimes it's good to either keep your window up or just get out of the car and then look around on the tops of a lot of stuff. But really listen, if you see flocks of things, look at all the flocks. It's really helpful if you look at all the flocks. Go where the action's at and hang out. So like sometimes in Lower Valley, you'll be down there and you'll see like just thousands and thousands of ducks. And you're like, yep, there's a bunch of mallards and some pintails and geese out here. But hang out for a while if you can, because sometimes when you're hanging out there, all of a sudden you'll see a golden eagle fly by. I've seen that. Or you'll see gyrfalcon come flying in. So just hanging out, there's a lot of action. It can be really cool. Look for any place of prominence when you're out in these, whether it's a rock pile, a fence post, a dirt mound, a hay bale. The square hay bales, when everything is iced over, sometimes when you're driving, look at the sides of them. I've seen birds like snow buntings eating bugs and whatever on the side of those hay bales. But I found that out by listening, getting out of the car and listening. So. Anyways, in the evenings or at night, look for hooting great horned owl or listen for great horned owls hooting and little toots of, the northern pygmy owls and such. And the best time of year for northern pygmy owls is right now. So keep your eyes out for little softball-sized birds with a little tail, and they can be on top of just about anything. I see them like, you can 70-mile-an-hour bird You just drive along and you'll see like, oh, well, there's this little guy right over there. Flashers, pull over safely, obviously. And then of course you can get your bonus goals. Everybody should be able to get their ring build goal. Just go to Costco, where you can buy just about anything. They have a volume discount on ring build goals. But you can also get herring and California goals, which I've talked about in the past. But those two are fairly easy to identify. The adults are, so you should be able to get at least 3 goals every year. Speaking of goals, the Flathead Gull Sanctuary, as Dan Casey calls it. You recognize this is the dump. Right now, the bottom, the green arrow on the right, that's in Business Loop. That is not very productive right now because that pond is frozen, but that is a good fall and spring location for them. But Flathead County has bought up all the homes in this Bright Star Trail, which is by this longer green arrow. And as of right now, although make sure you may need to walk in a little bit because I don't know how well it's plowed out. But you can go to the end of that and look, because you can no longer go up and just park off to the side and look through the goals. That's if you really want to look through a bunch of goals, which there are a lot of very cool goals. So target species, I don't know if people want to take a real quick. These are the ones that I'm looking for in the winter, because I get January and February are fairly slow, so I'm thinking to myself, like, it's great if I pick up like a spotted towhee, that's super fun, but if I don't see a spotted towhee, I'm okay. I'm going to try and find, these are the birds that I want to make sure, or I would like to get on my list, and obviously some of these are dreamers. I've gotten all of these birds this time of year, but I don't know if I've gotten every single one of them in one winter, but that's part of the fun. I don't know, you just go out and you just discover. Okay, so migration begins, and it's probably almost 8:15. So cool. So migration begins. As I was putting this together, I was getting so stinking excited because this is where the fun starts. The really fun thing about this is when I first started getting into birding, I didn't realize, like, I always thought, like, oh, geese and migration, right? And then a bunch of birds show up, and then a bunch of birds leave in the fall, kind of a thing. That's about as much as I knew. I didn't realize how staggered and food related and habitat related, and it's chapters, and it's super interesting. So maybe we'll find out if I can project that. So hopefully enthusiasm, I'll get that. The very first birds that come across are going to be our bigger ducks and geese. So we're looking at tundra and swans, apparently. So we have tundra swans. They come through here. They're all nesting. Not all. Most of these are nesting way far north. So definitely tundra swans, the greater white-fronted goose. A lot of these birds, we do have some nesting northern shovelers here, and then we have some pintails over there. They're doing courting flights right now. Notice that there's one female here and a bunch of males. But this is the time of year where these are our dabblers and our bigger ducks and geese. And this happens in March, so we're not that far away. We got a month and a half of making sure you get your red poles, and then it's go time. That's reality here. We're out here with these birds. We're looking for any open water. So Flathead River and then we're also looking for Flathead Lake, and then we're also looking for fields, because these birds. It's funny right now. I think while Lake Blaine's open, where I live up 206. I see the Canada geese fly north in the morning, and they're gleaning somewhere north of me, and then they'll fly south after breakfast. And then they'll fly up a little bit later on, and then they'll fly back. And so they're all like overnighting, or they're roosting on Lake Blaine. And obviously as that freezes over, they're going to have to move. But this is what's happening with all these birds. If you go out to Freeze Out Lake, they land and they're gleaning in all these wheat fields. So this is where paying attention to wheat fields is super important. But hopefully we'll see, there are always snow geese that come through here in varying sizes. If you're out paying attention, so look for your white geese. When you're looking through your flocks because you scan flocks now, because you were at my presentation and you have a spotting scope, you're looking for this guy right over here. Way harder to find than you think. You think like, oh man, it's got, look at those orange legs, an orange bill, like it's not even close to the same. And then you've got 2,500, 3,000 Canada geese out there, and they're all kind of brownish. This guy is like up to here, he in stubble, and he's got his head down, and every once in a while he picks it up, and you just scanned right past him. So scanning flocks, taking your time, like just looking for fun birds and just enjoying just all of the chaos that is Canada geese flocks. Also looking for cackling geese, which are, I don't know if I have a picture of them coming up. I may, if I have cackling geese coming up, I'm pretty sure. I don't know who did this program. Target species during this time would be, these are migrators, birds that migrate through. So we're looking for snow geese and Ross's geese. Don't have time to talk about the differences. The Ross's geese are harder to identify, mostly snow geese we get here. Greater white-fronted geese, we get handfuls of them. Sometimes we'll get them in flocks of like 7 or 8, and oftentimes they'll just be 1 or 2. Get by cackling goose, it looks like about 2/3 the size of a regular Canada goose. Tundra swans, should be able to find those. As they're flying over, that's the easiest way to do it. They're like, ho, 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 instead of like sounding like Charlie Brown trumpet, which would be the trumpeter swans. So hearing the tundra swans or seeing the yellow in the eye. But then Eurasian widgeons, like scanning your flocks, you'll see like 700,000, 800,000, whatever widgeons out there with just about everybody else. And I'm looking for one redhead that's not a redhead duck. But yeah, Eurasian widgeons, fun little bird. This is like when you're playing Where's Waldo, and this is the kind of nerdy stuff that like people like myself. And then you got a handful of gulls. Once again, Flathead Gull Sanctuary. Talk to Dan Casey if you want more about that. So this is Church Slough, a picture of Church Slough. There was a whooper swan there, which is probably like a released one, so you can count it, but it's also like maybe doesn't count. But over at Church Slough in the spring, that's one of the early places, and sometimes like just a little tiny section of it that's probably like 15 yards opens up, and they're just birds just pile on. You could like walk across ice and then walk across duck's back and then ice and then get to the other side, and your feet do not get wet. They're just piled in there. We have redheads, we have mallards, we have, there'll be, I think there's a pintail up there, and there'll be scaup and all kinds of different stuff, and apparently whooper swans. Foy's Lake, as it melts out, so we're talking March here, but that one takes quite a while, so maybe not so much Foy's Lake. West Valley, some of those ponds melt out, but sometimes what happens is in the middle of a field, you have a makeshift pond. You'll have like, geese swimming in a field because it just melts out, and you'll have all these different little ponds. Fairview Marsh, that's a little bit more later as well. Creston Wetlands that's also later, but Creston Wetlands right now is just like not cool at all. Like you go out to Creston Wetlands and there's just nothing really. I mean, there's some like house finches and a couple things like that, but boy howdy, is that a good place later on. So Lake Blaine, as it melts out too, it's really great. I am at Creston Wetlands. This one is kind of a funny place because it's really hard to see ducks, or birds at all. But there's some really great birds that come here. The question is, where do I go? Here it is. Here is the little secret sauce right over here. So here is the wetland. This is, north and south, right? There is a gentleman who lives here who has a bunch of big box trucks. He does not love that we look at Creston Wetlands, but his place is like pretty much the only place to get a good look at the wetlands. You can look at the wetlands without looking in his windows. You can do all these sorts of things. He just hates that anybody's there. So park before his driveway, before his mailbox. His brother lives up the road. His brother might come and have a conversation with you. You can totally be there. Just park off to the side of the road, but not too far, because we don't want to trespass, so we're in the county easement. But that's where you can go. Definitely need a spotting scope for anything very far out. But right down over here, where it says Montana for the Montana garage door, there's a little like great mud sort of an area where their shorebirds will be. There was nesting trumpeter swans there last year, and there's just like all along there's pockets at the top. This northeast corner is where I saw a Hudsonian godwit, which is a super cool bird. And so yeah, this place, there's like terns that come through here, pelicans. This is a great place to see American white pelicans. We get a handful of them every year, and this is a great spot to see them. Lake Blaine is also very difficult to access. The one spot that I have found is you drive Yeoman Hall Road, and you go all the way past the inlet where Blaine Creek comes in, and there's a little parking kind of area. You can park there. This is county easement property. but it's all private. Like it's private out into the water, private. So if you look at Onyx or you look at the Flathead County GIS, you will see it is private, like out into the water. And so, but this is a great spot. I recommend going, if you can, in the morning during the week, because on the weekends, especially, like I don't even go there in the summer, but in the springtime and the fall, there's like mule deer in that field above there. There'll be like a herd of mule deer in the spring. It's terrible. Please do not go there. Do not scare away my birds. I was like, last fall I saw it was like 9 or 10 snipe hanging out and dowitchers and just a bunch of cool birds. So, but yeah, I've seen a lot of fun things here. Have seen goshawks here a couple times and whatnot. So, so target species for birds moving through here would be American white pelicans. Now we're in April. We're starting American white pelicans, willets, marbled gawits, long-billed curlews. Those three are all larger shorebirds. These are the ones that this is kind of a good time to see them. You'll see them sometimes. Curlews will stop over in the valley just for a little tiny bit. And then Dunlin, but those larger ones, Crescent Wetlands is a really good place to kind of get those. I'll talk a little bit more about the curlews because I have a better spot for them. But Dunlins definitely are more West Valley as that melts out. And that's probably the shorebird that we would see mostly in April, and not so much when all the other shorebirds are coming through. But these are definitely early shorebirds. Most of the shorebirds, they wait till later on. Also, black-necked stilts. This was actually taken in North Shore WMA. So you know where the North Shore Farms is. If you drive down that road, it's actually gated at just before you turn into that. The people who live down there. But if you drive this road, last year there was a sage thrasher, I think. But oftentimes this flooded field can be really productive. I think that's a. What is that? I think that might be lesser yellowlegs in there as well. But this is good for shorebirds. This is where I saw that was. But yeah, West Valley is also good for black-necked stilts as well. Also American avocets and getting into some of the phalaropes, like the Wilson's phalaropes. But yeah, so like Farm Road, if you're driving up Farm Road, there's a split pond in there. That also melts out kind of early because it's shallow and the sun hits it and stuff. So this time, April, is when you can see some of these bigger shorebirds. These ones are, for the most part, slam dunks. When you see them, they're pretty unmistakable. So, but this is when you see them as early. Split Pond and Sunny Boone Trail. There was a period where I was having some. This split pond is really good to work on your ducks. The nice thing about this time of year, all these birds are coming all with brand new plumage. They look super sharp, right? They're all dressed up and ready for the ball. So this is really the good time to go ahead and be able to learn your ducks. And in the afternoon, there's a bunch of ducks that will be in here, and you can there's a place to park. This is parking, right? And there's a place where you can set up your spotting scope, and these birds are used to people, so it's a really good place with the sun to your back to be able to look at these birds in the springtime and be able to see them. And then walking the Sunny Boone Trail, there's all kinds of birds and all through this longer slough here to see. So Split Pond and Sunny Boone Trail is always really good as it starts to when we start getting into April. Like I said, we have ruddy ducks with their really pretty blue bills and everything, so handsome. But after we've had the bigger ducks come through more in March, and so April's having some of our smaller ducks, and now we're starting to get our puddle ducks because they need the puddles, the smaller, we call them puddle ducks because they're in the smaller bodies of water, the wetlands and stuff, so they need those melted out. They're not going to be hanging out in like Flathead Lake. So they wait for a little bit longer so that they can go ahead and have, their habitat opens up. So this is kind of that unfolding that's really, really fun. So that's going to be happening in April. But also mid-March is when we're going to go ahead and see our tree swallows starting to show up, which is like, that feels early. Dan's column, the Flathead Valley Bird Report, he's like, seems like he's Nostradamus because he's always telling you like, oh, you should start to see this. And then lo and behold, because, science. But what happens is that we start to, so first it's the tree, then violet green show up, and then April we start to get all the rest of the swallows. We've got a lot of swallows, by the way, that actually nest in the valley, which is really fun. And obviously swifts aren't swallows, but the swifts start to come in towards the end of April, and then May, black swifts start to come through. The first thing that I want to say is the best way to tell swallows from swifts is not like wing shape or anything like that. It's how they fly. Swallows, when they fly, their wings collapse against their body. So if you're seeing a bird that has like, oh, it's pretty fast, like I can see it like flap, flap, flap as it moves along, but it looks like it's going against its body, then you're looking at a swallow. And obviously there's 5 or 6 to choose from, 2, 4, 6 to choose from. Then the next challenge comes in. But the swifts are very stiff wing beats. They're almost like hummingbirds in the way that it's super stiff. And so if you see a swift flying around, if you see a bird with like a boomerang and it's flying, shaped like a boomerang, and it's very, very stiff, and just like almost like just vibrating like this. It's just going through the air, moving like this, and it's just crazy. That is going to be a swift. Now, I've told you that because I want you to pay attention to Vox's swifts. As you see Vox's swifts doing their little vibration, they're all over town, and you'll see them like in Glacier and all that. But as you see them a lot, kind of get into your mind what that looks like, because when you see a black swift, whenever I see a black swift, I know it's a black swift because it's so much slower and so much longer than a Vox's swift. So that's how I know, because you can see black swifts in the valley. Like I've seen them over, we saw them over Bojangles, the hot spot of Bojangles for birding.
For swifts.
For black swifts,
Yes.
like, yeah, exactly. And then apparently they like greasy diner food. But then we also have, so black swifts are great there, obviously, behind waterfalls. But actually, I find sometimes behind waterfalls are harder because you have to wake up super early or be there like just at dusk as it's coming. But over the valley, if you see a black swift, they'll be like on overcast days in the spring. That's a great time to be looking for them. And then in the fall, I saw a ton of them out in West Valley flying around, and I was glassing for raptors in the sky, because that's sometimes what I do, is just pan through the sky and I'll see a hawk. And I saw like a bunch of swifts flying, and I was like, those are the slower wing beats. I think those are, and that's that really amazing National Geographic photo of a black swift that I got. That's about the best that I can do. You should look at Josh's photos of black swifts, and then you can compare it to mine, and mine are so much better. Anyway, so May black swifts, okay, cool. So this is swifts and swallows coming in. So we're still talking back to the April part. There are some western meadowlarks still around. People are seeing them, which is really fun. But really, they start coming in April. Also, we start to see our first insectivores, right, are really starting to show up. We're starting to see our bluebirds, starting to see our varied thrushes. This over here, this really handsome devil over here, is a Say's phoebe, and there's a few that do nest around here. Probably one of my favorite. I took this photo. I'm super proud of it. But this guy was super cooperative. And so this was over at Fairview Marsh. If you want to see a Say's phoebe in the springtime, Fairview Marsh, the road that goes right by Fairview Marsh, it's a great spot to see. It's really a great spot to see a lot of the bluebirds in the spring, robins, and that kind of stuff. And of course, there's a marsh over there. If you go in the morning, I have a little thing down here that says, "Don't forget Virginia." Virginia rails are almost impossible to see. You can't see them. It's very tough to see. So mostly it's going to be about hearing them. So play a lot of their calls and go to like Fairview Marsh in the morning, and then you can go ahead and hear them. And then soars are there, also there, and then just a lot of other northern areas and all kinds of stuff. So Fairview Marsh is really hard to see the actual water, though. I kind of struggle with that one, and you're looking south into the sun, so it's not my favorite place, but it does have a couple of really cool things like that. But of course, April is a time when we start to see ospreys. I always get excited when I see ospreys in the springtime, because I know it's happening. Turkey vultures are always fun to see as well. April, I like to bike at least once the road or walk the road. And eBird, I bird, it's super great. Obviously, the most common reason that you be birding Glacier in the spring is for harlequins, and it's great because you don't have people in there, hopping in red rocks, swimming around, losing their crocs and stuff in the creek there. And but you actually have the birds doing the bird thing, and you just get to see dippers and everything. But it's also a sneaky great place for fox sparrows. As you're going up, riding your bike up the road, you can go ahead and there's a place where there's like an avalanche informative sign. If you look up on the mountain, like you can see it, but there's a ton of hawthorn berry bushes there, and there's these a lot of these fox sparrows singing. There's just a bunch of like there's a great for Pacific wrens because they have their little call that lasts forever. And you're like, are you done? And it's going. And then fox sparrows. I know the fox sparrow song because they do the. That's if you hung out with me long enough, you know that I do the foxy move. And I've been polluting people for a long time about this one. They do a foxy move, but they have a real blocky head. And they have a swoop, a real noticeable swoop in their call. And there's a lot of them in Glacier. And I was like, oh, these are a hard bird to find. And then I was like, once I learned their calls, and then sparrows, instead of just being like in the leaf litter, like hopping around, in the springtime, they're just like, hey, I'm right here. Take a look at me. So anyways, fox sparrows and all kinds of different birds. And speaking of sparrows, April is when we start to see, like towards the end of April, now we're starting to see a lot more of our sparrows showing up. So now we have our Savannah and Vesper sparrows, which are this is what, once again, because you're still going out and birding in the farmland and the grassland, so that's where we're going to see our Savannah and Vesper sparrows. This is Savannah sparrow right here with a really prominent yellow lores. I'm looking at the color, I can't get it right. Vesper sparrows have a white eye ring. They're both kind of, and the Savannah sparrows have a shorter tail, whereas Vesper sparrows is longer. But the calls are very distinctive. To me, a Vesper sparrow sounds like a song sparrow of the field. Like it sounds like a song sparrow call, kind of. It has some of those qualities, but it's out in the middle of a field. And then Savannah sparrows like, and you'll know if you know. Anyways, white-crowned sparrows, they're making their way mostly to Glacier. I think like they house like 99% of the white-crowned sparrows up there. If you've hiked any of the trails up there, I'm not Denny, okay. But they have that, and they do it, and it's really fun. I'm going to keep moving. So chipping sparrows, they're kind of like the mixed, you can find those anywhere in the forests around here. They start showing up. Lincoln sparrows are more wet, like over by the Crescent Fish Hatchery is a good spot to find them. And then fox sparrows I've already told you about. May, a little bit later, we start to get clay colored. Find any bush in like the fields areas, like Lower Valley and stuff. If you can find a bush, it's not uncommon to hear their really wonderful call. But they are a handsome brown sparrow. So Heron Park in April is super great. Flowers are awesome during that time of year. It melts out really quick, and there's a bunch of 9-bark, just low shrub everywhere. And there are a ton of spotted towhees up there. We do a field trip up there. I've done it 2 years in a row, and every time I go up there in the spring, I find at least one spotted towhee. So that's always a fun spring bird. And also, it's great for Williamson sapsuckers. Williamson sapsuckers can be hard to find, but in this area, you can hear them and play their drumming. So a red-naped sapsucker, they're like, and they sound like a drunk drummer. They just have no, like, it's like, what are you doing? But the Williamson sapsucker, they're like, it's very disciplined, and if you play it on your phone, because you have Merlin Sound ID or Merlin Bird ID, you can play the different drums. The drums is the key. So that when you're out there, you're listening, you can go ahead and hear it. So anyways, Williamson sapsuckers, Heron Park. And then put out your feeders in April. We're going to start getting our callipees. And are you guys getting excited about birds right now? We're going to get our callipees, and our rufous hummingbirds are coming back. And then warblers already. Yes, yellow rump warblers. They're the first warbler and the last warbler. They're the alpha and the omega warbler. And then we've got, now we're right on the cusp. The floodgates are going to open now because the rest of the insectivores are coming. We're looking for flycatchers and warblers. So both warblers and flycatchers. And so generally speaking, we're looking for riparian areas. The great thing about May, and flycatchers are a really hard group to ID a lot of times, and this is the time of year to like find them and ID them because of the calls. Their calls are very distinctive. They're definitely different from each other. I actually have a note written out that's like a word, like what we do is our olive-sided flycatcher, what we do. And then they have like, and so you can do whatever mnemonic thing is good for you. But I have like flit burr, and I like, literally will go through my notes again, like, okay, what is that one? Oh, that's the Hammond flycatcher and whatever. So, but yeah, our flycatcher is showing up, and these are going to be a lot of the riparian areas. There's a Shady Lane Pond. If you guys know, do you guys know where that is? That's a really great spot. It's over by Old Steel Bridge. That's a really great spot in the spring to go ahead and see a lot of the Tally Lake-ish sorts of birds. Also bring your mosquito repellent because there's a reason why these birds are here. It's not for your pleasure, it's because they love mosquitoes. But yeah, warblers and flycatchers, you can find a lot of them there, so that's super fun. And then of course we get some of our more elegantly pretty birds. We have our western tanager and our black-headed grosbeak. Our western tanager doing the drunken Irish robin. That's how I always see it. Because they all sound like robins-ish, but as you start to think of the western tanager as the drunken robin with his like singing a dirge, you'll hear it. The black-headed grosbeak is like he's on speed, kind of like how I'm trying to talk right now. Is the black-headed grosbeak sounds like a robin going super fast, and then the lazuli bunting. The call of the lazuli bunting sounds like a warbler and a sparrow. I can't figure out which one it is, and I'm like, oh, it's probably a lazuli bunting. So the western tanager, forests all over the place. Black-headed grosbeak, we're going to be looking in a lot of the riparian areas that we see a lot of warblers. Lawrence Park is a really great place for them. They nest in there as well. Lazuli buntings, I find those a lot of times in, there was that park and ride in Columbia Falls, now that I think about it. But I find them a lot in the park as well. So right now, birds are nesting in every habitat. This is the time of year where going out and birds are singing. You cannot throw a rock at habitat without hitting a nesting area. Don't throw rocks. Any habitat you go to, there's going to be birds nesting there. That's when I was down in Colorado, spending a lot of time hiking in Rocky Mountain, that was one of the things that was kind of interesting is that they don't have as many nesting birds as we do. And so they have a handful, and they have some birds that we don't have, like a black rosy finch. Brown rosy finch, brown cap rosy finch. But they don't have as many birds nesting as we do. So right now, this is super fun. You know, we've got our Savannah sparrows nesting in fields. We've got loons in our big lakes. We've got Caston's finches. We've got, then we have over there we have our white-tailed ptarmigan. So like anywhere you go, there are birds putting themselves out there, competing, they're eating food, and they become a lot more visible and a lot more easy to find. And so May and June are awesome. That's all I gotta say about that. Also, we do a field trip in April, and I would say that we should do a field trip in April and maybe do one in May. Because May is super sweet because that's when it's warmer and there's more birds out there. But Smith Lake is amazing for grebes. I think you can see almost every single grebe that we have out there. The redneck grebes do not shut up. It's fantastic. Once again, it's better to go earlier in the morning and not on the weekends. But also, there's so many more birds there. There's marsh wrens are really good over there. Black terns. I don't know if you've ever seen black terns, but they're a tern that's black. They fly really tern-like, kind of loopy around, and they're all black, and it's super fun. So anyway, Smith Lake is very, very cool to see that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about niche birds. And that is some of these birds are a little bit harder to find. This actually was taken in Zion. This is the best picture I have of a Lewis woodpecker. Steve Gnidek he knows where some of these are up in North Fork. Heading out to Howell Lake is a good spot for these. But first, I'm going to talk about Bragg Road. This is where the recently we've been seeing the Snow buntings, thank you. We've been seeing the snow buntings, but in the summer, or this like kind of May, June time frame, bobolinks is one of the few places that they nest. I've seen them actually, last year I saw them over by Creston Wetlands, and it made me really sad because I knew that the field that they were in was probably going to get mowed, and it did. So that would be a failed nesting site, but seeing them on Bragg Road is great. It's a nice, wet, kind of grassy area, and this is the kind of stuff they love. And the males will fly up onto power lines, they'll fly up onto fences, and they sing. It's great. It's like, for us, like a taste of the grassland birds, like lark buntings and stuff. So really fun birds to have around there. That's located over here, down in the bottom right-hand corner where it says Exxon and Murdoch's and all that. So this is up over by Blue Moon, where Highway 40 and Highway 2. On the bottom right, and if you head north on Half Moon Road and then head on over, or you can turn on Dillon Road over here, but it's the dirt road section of Bragg Road is where you can find bobolinks. Yeah, and then we have other good spots.
Oh.
There it is. Did I go past one? Oh, okay, here we go. We're gonna go back if you'll let me. All right, so Logan Pass is a really cool spot to see some of these alpine birds, subalpine and alpine birds. We have, at the top right-hand corner, we have gray crown rosy finches. Sometimes you get those at your feeders in the winter. I had one land in my yard, and I was like, what the heck is that? And it's like, because they sometimes do come down in the valley. If you do hawk watch, you oftentimes will get to see a few flocks come by. But hermit thrushes are another, like they're the upper elevation version of a Swainson's thrush. There is some overlap, but generally speaking, like if you're up at Sperry Chalet, mostly it's hermit thrushes. But if you go up to Logan Pass, you can get actually both Swainson's and hermit thrushes. There is at Logan Pass. So here's a little tricky part about. So if you care about Flathead County, here's a little map I found on my computer. But you can see this. You can see so Logan Pass is up here in the upper right-hand corner, and you can see this is the county line right over here. So to the bottom right corner we have Glacier County, and the left of everything else is Flathead County. So if you are hiking along the Highline Trail, any bird you see along the Highline Trail, that counts as a Flathead County bird. Because I don't think Dan Casey actually has a ptarmigan in Flathead County yet. He doesn't climb mountains. I do. So I've seen him on top of Pollock and stuff. And also if you do the Floral Park Traverse, Como Pass area, that's another place where you can go ahead and get them. But if you hike up to Hidden Lake Pass right over here, anything on the, Hidden Lake side, any of those birds count as a Flathead County bird. So that's kind of fun. That's where you can see them. The other one is, there is a climber's trail that goes up for Oberlin, if you know where that's at. But stay on the trail because we don't want any other resource damage. And we definitely don't want anything getting closed down because birders were out there clomping a bunch of sensitive vegetation to find a ptarmigan. But that is another place that you can go. But if you're walking up that boardwalk, anything on your right-hand side until it starts turning south, anything on the right-hand side of that is fair game for Flathead County. But Logan Pass is a spot where if you spend some time, especially if you're glassing around, the elusive ptarmigan can be found there. So if you go over to Smith Lake and you continue on Browns Meadow Road, Browns Meadow is really a cool drive, and I like to do this one like in May and or June. And this is how you can get some grassland rarities. First of all, as you're going up and over, Browns Meadow is really, first of all, you can bird at Smith Lake, which is great. And then you go up to Browns Meadow. I have seen nesting great gray owls in there. They were on the far side, like inside of a, what time is it? Oh, geez, I gotta close things up. Okay, so grassland, but Browns Meadow is really cool for like, you have Wilson snipe, and you have soras, you have a bunch of things up there, and like I said, I saw a nesting they were feeding fledgling chicks of great gray owls there, but then continue on going down on the other side, and you can see there are the display of the common nighthawks, where they do this, where they fly up and they're like, doing their big, like, cool, like floating through the air, and then they go and they dive down, and of course they're far away, so you see them dive down, and then you hear, it's really, really cool. But as you're coming down on the other side from Browns Meadow Path, like we would pull off the side, weaving Shannon and Bridger and I would be done our big day for Flathead Audubon. But once you get on the other side of this and you start to come out, you come down to Nyarada area. So this is going to be west of Big Arm. So there's this little tiny, like, it's almost like the Florida of Flathead County. You know, it's just this, like arm, you know, reaching down. So this is actually Flathead County. It's this weird little stretch, but it is really great. And so that road, Browns Meadow Road, comes out right over here. It's e-birded hotspot as Cromwell Creek and Hog Heaven. But this is where you can go ahead and see lots of you can see curlews. This past year there were lark sparrows, grasshopper sparrows. That's where I saw my Lewis's woodpecker down there. Rock wrens. It's a crazy. It's like grabbing a chunk of central Montana and putting it down here. There's actually this other little road called Sullivan Creek, which I'm going to check out this year. I was like, as I was doing this, I was like, what is that road? That's still Flathead County. And I was like, it's public. I'm on it. But only until that little hook, and then after that I think it's tribal private property, so I'm not going to do that. But that little hook right there, I'm going to do that because that looks cool. So anyway, the other one is Camas Creek. Super cool. Bring bear spray as well as bug spray with all these camas in the spring. And this area in here is really good. We saw an alder flycatcher, but there's tons of flycatchers, tons of these really wet meadow birds. And there's also the bird that I have not gotten, and I've tried a couple times, and that is in June. There's this little teeny sparrow called a Nelson sparrow. Look it up, because it always seems like they're standing on two sticks of grass, like legs spread apart, and they're just the cutest big eyes, like they look like they were made by Disney. And I really want to see them. They're super quiet, and what?
Wouldn't that be the LeConte sparrow? No.
It would be the LeConte sparrow. Thank you very much. See, that's why Bridger's here. Fact checked me. I appreciate that. Yes, the LeConte sparrow. That's the one I want. So look that one up instead. Not the Nelson sparrow. That's a different one. Yeah, LeConte sparrow. And so, yes, so this is a good area for that. There, sometimes you can get a northern hawk owl. So this area is really cool. You can go as far as you want up into Rogers Meadow. But yeah, have fairly waterproof boots though in the springtime because it is pretty squishy out there. And like I said, bear spray is definitely recommended as well. But this is where we saw, this is the alder flycatcher that we saw, and yeah. So fall migration starts in July. So there's that. So fall starts for July for us birders. That's when all of these shorebirds that like came through earlier in the year, they're on their way back already. I'm not exactly sure like what they feed their chicks, but they're already starting to work their way through. So if you look, you can see, you know, there's a chance you might catch them in like April and May, but definitely the bar charts are much more friendly for this time of year. So shorebird migration begins, and shorebirds really like these little muddy areas. So Farm Road, the edge of all of these different ponds as they are drying up in West Valley. There's these muddy flats. But this is July, so it gets hot. So Farm Road's awesome because the birds are very close to you, which is great. Obviously, don't pressure them, kind of a thing. But they usually are pretty tame. You can be relatively close. West Valley is a great place for them, but if you go there like 10 o'clock in the morning on a sunny day, it's just so much waves, and you're trying to figure out, if you're new to shorebirds especially, it's just death. But yeah, there's really one of the tips that I have is this is a really great book for shorebird ID. Shorebirds, the big thing is like size difference, bill length, things like that, not so much plumage. But the shorebird guide is really great. And this guy on YouTube, Bob Duchesne, there's some people might know him as being super awesome. But Bob Duchesne, his shorebird identification secrets revealed. I know it's a little clickbaity, but it's really good. He has a thing about peeps that is super awesome. So I've learned quite a bit from him. And so yeah, just kind of learning shorebirds, and this is the time of year to do it. So, but like I said, August is hot and quiet. Birds start trickling out. These are some stilted sandpipers. Or stilt sandpipers out in West Valley, and you can see like this is about the best I could do picture-wise. But birds are starting to trickle out. It's July and August. They're starting to get quiet again. So, you know, I call it the Great Wandering because all of a sudden random birds start showing up. So it's still really fun to get out. This is when you can get Lapland longspurs out in West Valley, swamp sparrows out in West Valley. I've actually found a bobolink out in West Valley as well. But just going out to these just good habitat places where there is food is going to be super helpful. But yeah, we're looking for unusuals, and then of course Hawkwatch. Yeah. So Hawkwatch is like September through October. It's like what I think about most of the time during that time of year. This would obviously be first year. First year.
I'd call that a second year.
Agos, yeah. It is true. It would be a second year. Yes, it's the first full cycle. So Hawkwatch. Yeah. So this is a great way if you can get up to Hawkwatch. It's a great way to go ahead and add a bunch of raptors to your list that are not common in the Flathead, whether it's a broadwing hawk or a Swainson's hawk or something like that. This is really a great place. Peregrine falcons come by. And that is both here in the Jewel and then obviously Mount Brown. But if you can't make it up there, I don't know what my next slide is, but if you can't make it up to, say for example, you don't have and you haven't seen a golden eagle or you like to see them more, going to Lake McDonald in the parking lot in October, like especially the second, third week of October, is really a great way. They have spotting scopes set up there and they're looking at eagles migrating, and oftentimes those eagles will go low depending upon the winds. They'll go a lot lower then we can actually see up higher. Foy's Lake is also sneaky great in September and October. For some reason, it's like this little trap, and we get scoters. I've seen a white wing. This year there was a black white wing and surf scoter seen and a long-tailed duck seen on Foy's Lake. So it can be really, really a cool spot in September and October. And then, we start to get our tundra swans, and migration is pretty much wrapping up, and we're back to our winter guys showing up here. The one last thing is, what about owls? Does anybody here have a hard time finding great horned owls? Because here's what I will tell you. They're very easy to find, especially this time of year. If you drive around dinner time, so like 5 o'clock, in like any of the valley, anywhere where you'd see a red-tailed hawk, and just look at power poles, and if you see a house cat sitting on top of a power pole, that is going to be a great horned owl. So you should be able to see great horned owls like all the time. Just drive the fields, don't drive in the fields, but drive Lower Valley, whatever. I saw one tonight as I was coming over. Northern pygmy owls I've already talked about. Look on tops of things for them. And then, let's see, for barred owls, for northern saw-whet owls, listen for northern saw-whet owls, but listen going all the way back to magpies, ravens, crows, jays, chickadees, nuthatches. Listen to them, because their life depends on it. And so they're always on the lookout, and they will find them. So I found 3 saw-whet owls because of chickadees. And I don't know if I could find them otherwise, unless they're just tooting. But if you're walking through Owen Sour Wine, or you're walking through a forested area, and you hear birds, like we're not talking like chickadee-dee-dee, chickadee-dee-dee, but if it sounds like chickadee-dee-dee-dee-dee, dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, and you hear, and they're all like close to one area, you probably have an owl. Usually with hawks or falcons, the birds will be dispersed a little bit higher up, but if they're like in one, like look where they're looking at the owl. If you see blue jays or magpies and they're pecking the branch that they're on, they are not happy right now. So pay attention, because you might see a hawk or or an owl or something like that. And that's how I found my barred owls. I did see one when I was in the trailhead for Huckleberry Lookout is a really good spot also for there. And then obviously for something like a short-eared owl or snowy owls, reports are super helpful. But going out at dusk or earlier in the morning, looking, I don't know when you saw yours, Pat, but what time of day did you see the short-eared owl?
Noon.
Okay, so noon, yeah. So they can be out in the middle of the day. I was like, I'm gonna go out in the evening, like right at dusk, and I saw it flying around, and then it was like diving down and stuff. So, But yeah, definitely looking on tops of poles. So that's oh yeah, and then northern hawk owls. It's pretty much those are, good luck, right, Steve? Anyways, wow, it's only 8:30 now. I tried to hurry. Yeah, you guys all right?